One bright afternoon at the university, Professor Mostafa stood at the front of the classroom, eager to begin his lesson. His students, Tarek, Layla, and Sarah, sat attentively, ready for the day's discussion. They had been studying cultural awareness, language learning, and the fascinating connections between words and their meanings. Today, we're going to explore how cultural traditions, taboos, and language structures shape our understanding of the world around us, Professor Mostafa announced. And we'll also dive into how prefixes, suffixes, and word roots can help us understand new vocabulary better. Tarek raised his hand. Professor, how do cultural traditions and language come together? Professor Mostafa smiled. Great question, Tarek. Let me give you an example. In the United States, there are many diverse cultural traditions based on history, location, and ethnicity. Take Hawaii, for instance. The hula dance is a traditional Hawaiian form of storytelling that communicates their history and spirit. Each movement and gesture in the dance represents something deeply connected to their ancestors and the natural world. Layla was curious. So, the dance is not just about moving, it's about passing on history? Exactly, said Professor Mostafa. It's about connecting the present to the past through culture. Now, let's talk about Louisiana. The Mardi Gras festival in New Orleans blends French, Spanish, and African American traditions. There are vibrant parades, colorful costumes, and lively dances, all celebrating the diverse cultures that contributed to the city's rich history. Tarek nodded thoughtfully. That sounds like a fusion of different cultures coming together. Right, Professor Mostafa continued. And in Texas, you have rodeos that reflect the state's cowboy culture, showing how deeply the West is ingrained in Texas identity. The state fair is another example. It's not just about agriculture or food, it's a celebration of Texas pride in its farming, ranching, and cultural history. Sarah, who had been quiet, spoke up. So, understanding cultural traditions helps us understand people better? Exactly, Sarah, said Professor Mostafa. And as we learn about cultures, it's important to be aware of taboos and sensitive topics that might offend others. In the US, for example, it's generally considered impolite to ask about someone's finances, such as how much they earn. Politics and religion are also sensitive topics. They should be approached carefully, especially in social settings. Layla thought about this. Does that mean you have to know the rules of a culture to avoid disrespecting people? Yes, Professor Mostafa replied. And that's why we need to demonstrate openness and a willingness to learn about other cultures. This can be done by asking respectful questions, like, what is your favorite holiday, and how do you celebrate it, or can you tell me about the food traditions in your culture? By participating in cultural events and being open to different perspectives, we show that we value others' customs. Tarek leaned forward. But how do we communicate across cultures effectively, especially when language might be a barrier? Professor Mostafa nodded. Great point, Tarek. Effective cross-cultural communication involves both verbal and nonverbal cues. In the US, smiling is seen as a sign of friendliness and approachability, while eye contact signals attentiveness and respect. However, too much eye contact can be seen as confrontational. It's important to adapt your communication style based on the situation and cultural context.